Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you are watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Jeffrey. Francois, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. You should have let me put spiderwebs behind your background because here we are doing another one from Atlanta, and you're not
I
speaking.
know. Well, I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna be back in Pittsburgh in a couple weeks. So I guess I'll be here. We have a few more podcasts in the next couple weeks. Yeah, we'll do it.
What day are you
We'll do
leaving?
it.
The 29th?
Yeah, 28th, 29th, one of those days.
We have Cassandra Craven on the 20th. We are
We've
having
got some awesome guests in the next.
Omer
Actually,
Dar.
yeah,
We're
okay.
having Dennis
We
Kelly.
will.
We're having
We will decorate this afternoon, if not tomorrow.
Perfect. I really don't even need you there. I can do it myself if I want to. But I think I have more of this. I have more of this. I have two boxes sitting just yonder that we
Okay,
can use.
I see you hid them because we decorated the office pretty well too.
Well, I kind of hid them because this is my personal stash. These are
my you don't want to
home
intermingle
items.
those.
Yeah. So like
makes sense.
Some of it's new stuff that I bought. Some of it is very old. I have had this pumpkin since I was a child. I mean, at least probably since I was like 10. And no, he doesn't have a name. I don't know how. I name everything, but I love this freaking pumpkin. But he just hangs out in here with me.
Well, how were you? How was your weekend?
It was good. I had a spooky themed ladies' night over the weekend with a girlfriend of mine. She has it every quarter. And I got to just like kind of hang out with my parents yesterday. They got a new chest freezer and we installed that, for lack of a better term. Moved it around a couple rooms and decided where they wanted it.
Chest freezer. They've got to be storing some pretty good stuff, which, is probably a great idea, thinking about just how screwed supply chain is nowadays, and especially domestically here in the US. I mean, we're talking about food shortages, food spikes. I mean, buying in larger quantities and storing it isn't a bad idea, especially today.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I would like to do the same thing, but I'm waiting on a new refrigerator get delivered to my place because my ice maker quit working. And then they told me it's not my ice machine in my freezer, it's the whole heckin' unit that needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
So I don't want to fill it with food because then they're like, if you could empty it when we deliver the new one, that'd be cool. I'm like, okay, but then where am I going to put all my food while I'm at work? You know what I mean? And I can't just fill the freezer in here. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. It gets tricky, but I mean, it's going to be weird. And I think this is actually another great thing that we can talk to our guest about today is really seeing how brands and Amazon sellers and I mean, just online retailers in general, how they're expecting to weather this shitstorm of domestic supply chain.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, lack of truckers. UPS and FedEx are continuously raising their rates, so being off of Amazon is tougher. PPC just continuously skyrocketing. The storage fees at Amazon also going up. It's like, all these little things that I think even as consumers are going to be important to us, right? Like 2-day shipping. It's just a standard. Walmart's competing with it. Deliver's offering. They partnered with Walmart to offer this. It's going to be interesting. So I'd love to talk to Allan about this too.
Yes. Well, let's go on ahead and bring Allan on stage. Today we have with us Allan Fisch. He is the co-founder and co-CEO of Moonshot Brands. Allan, how are you?
I'm great, guys. And yeah, definitely, e-commerce is front and center in what's going on in the world. Francois, as you were saying, and it's going to be interesting to see. But it's been probably one of the most resilient sectors throughout COVID, which has been a surprise to all people, including some investors that had quite different thoughts about this space. When I started my journey in it, but I'm sure we're going to get overcome this and learn more and actually become better and faster and probably cheaper potentially in the long run for the end customer.
Yeah. What was YC's take on the future of e-commerce? Because I know you're backed by Y-Combinator, which to anyone that doesn't know is an amazing incubator based in Silicon Valley, right?
YC's, it's probably the world's most preeminent technology incubator. In winter 21, we were, to my knowledge, we were the first company in YC as an aggregator. and an aggregation play. Like traditionally they invest in, very typical standard B2B or B2C, technology. And they, like everyone else, saw what happened during COVID to the e-com space with, penetration doubling, the companies really sustaining, the most difficult retail environment and thriving in it. And they thought, this is a time of disruption, and in disruption you see change. And they were super excited, to take a bet on the future of e-commerce.
Yeah, I mean, they have some amazing companies that came out of their incubator. Airbnb, DoorDash, I think, was another one.
Yep.
Instacart, I think, was amazing companies.
Wow.
I don't think Airbnb is with the YC continuation program, but nonetheless, I mean, they're investing in obviously very great companies. So for you to be a part of that journey and having the resources that they're able to provide, I'm excited to see what you're going to be able to offer the world in the next couple of years, especially.
Yeah, it was really excellent. Like, I mean, what is amazing actually is, like, in our cohort, the guys from Airbnb came and spoke to us about their journey. The guys from DoorDash spoke to us about their journey. And I think really, one thing that resonated, overall through all those companies, because there were similar companies and competitors that were non-YC in their spaces, but there's an unbelievable resounding, outcome in the data that shows, YC's almost been an anomaly in how many, outstanding tech companies they've had, how many unicorn, startups they had. And I think the mentality was a little bit different about, many business problems. And I mean, when we look, at the e-commerce space, we're e-commerce founders who went through all the ups and downs of selling, e-com company. But, we really, our goal and our mission is to scale e-commerce companies globally with the press of a button, and build an omni-channel platform that gets portfolio companies global and on multiple marketplaces and D2C and even on affiliate sites almost instantly, like bringing it really all together, because we think the future of e-commerce is really about brands and products, and that people want products everywhere. Like, I want to see my products when I'm on Instagram. I want to see my products, at a bit of, let's say, like me, a later age, when I'm with my kids and I'm going to Costco in the morning, to buy, to do my dadly duties and, buy a bunch of the products for the week. I can see it over there. And there's so many different groups, and there's so much diversity in who's buying this way, that there's no reason for products, especially private label products today, to only be in one place.
Mm-hmm. Well, and before we get too far into the conversation, let's let everybody know a little bit about you, Allan. So clearly you were an e-commerce brand owner at one point in time. How did you get involved with YC? Where were you at before Moonshot Brands? And, what do you guys do today?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, I guess I'm, one of these people who's always been, building businesses and fascinated with business. And, from when I launched my first baseball card company when I was 12, and launching, a company selling tea, etc. when I was a kid at my cottage. I live in Toronto, and we had a cottage outside the city. I've always really been involved and excited by, building companies, and, met my co-founders, CJ Izakow and Jesus Sotelo, back when I went to business school at Wharton, to take my business game up, another level. And, before that, had acquired a bunch of companies in the shared office space, and we put them together and we rolled them up and we made a larger company with the tech platform. But after that, launched a company called HomeSav, where we sold online home decor, lifestyle products globally across North America. Before, Shopify was something that really existed, we had to build this, this experience, like, kind of nuts to bolts. And, I remember days, calling influencers up or even cold calling them, sending out email lists to them. Like, it wasn't as efficient as today, but it was super exciting. Like, I remember in 2010 or 11, folks would ask, can you actually monetize and acquire customers on Facebook? Because at that time, everyone was only optimizing Google. And, we had early breakthroughs there, and it was, really amazing for us. But it was just a change in time that, everyone started moving from like that more direct channel to, having their daily check-in on multiple social media channels. And like, we've seen that evolve now to Insta, then TikTok, and, a bunch of the newer, mediums that are coming up. I mean, retail affects everything, and so does e-commerce. And it's nice to see the whole loop come around, full circle. And
yeah,
I think
definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. I'm good.
I was just going to say, and when you were doing HomeSav, you had a really cool experience that I think everybody would be interested to hear just a little bit about, which was being featured on Dragon's Den, which for us in the States is Shark Tank. So it's a show all around the world, and it started in Japan, and it was called Money Tigers, I think I saw in 2001. But you
That's
guys are
right.
on Dragon's Den. You were on the Canadian one though, right? Because the British one has the same name, and I was very confused. I was like, did you fly over the pond to go on Dragon's Den?
Yeah, it is confusing, but they all, the funny thing is, like, Mr. Wonderful became sort of famous in Canada before he became famous on your Shark Tank. And it was actually really funny. We went out for this edition for Dragon's Den, and we thought, wow, what an amazing place. Like we can, go on Dragon's Den. There's 2 million plus eyeballs looking at us. Mm-hmm. We have 7 minutes at least to bring our product to the world. And if they choose us, we have this interesting set of investors that are also influencers in a way, so they could really get us, our company to the next level, grow our volume, and get us well known. But at the same time, if it didn't work out, we still would bring our brand to the world. We figured we would have, hundreds of thousands potentially of new users. And, one day we went to a tryout in the outskirts of Toronto. 4,000 people showed up. There was no organized lineup.
Wow.
It was the most chaotic room I've ever seen, with like disparate people in costumes trying to figure out ways to impress these people. And like, I saw an orange pylon just standing there, and we didn't know when we'd be in there, but we thought, okay, if we get in there first and we really nail it, we'll be super lucky. So there was like no lineup. And I asked my partner to kind of just distract someone a little bit, on the staff there. And I took a few pylons, I put them at the start of the line, and I said, hey, this is the start of the line. And then all of a sudden 5,000 people were behind us.
Oh my God.
So without having to be those sweaty people that like waited the whole day and, didn't get the opportunity to show their best, we were literally like the first group that got up there and gave our pitch and got an opportunity. And like, look, we overacted it. We really nailed it. And we were like, we felt great after that. Like, we just thought we were super engaging to them. And we also got in there before we'd waited a lot. Like, we were there for half an hour. And then, and then the day when they were supposed to get back to us, of course, there were some administrative issues and we had to wait another couple of weeks. But then they got back to us and told us, that we'd be on Dragon's Den, which was like, super exciting for us. And, we built campaigns around it, really got ready for that day. And then, the day we got on, we must have brought like literally an 18-foot-long truck with like various different pieces of furniture, which we all carried in. And we had our sisters, brothers, uncles, carried in during the process. And everyone just wanted to carry so they could be on Dragon's Den for like 5 minutes. And, of course, we get there and we get up for the pitch, and Kevin insults all of us to death for a ton of time. And we really actually were filming for like an hour, and only 7 minutes of that, would actually make the air. And it was amazing. Like, by the time we saw it air, they have like an hour and a half of you looking like an ass, like to put it all together and string it all together and make it really funny. So the punchline was they made a huge ass of us and it was really funny. But on the other hand, this was a time in e-commerce when VCs were not, investing as thoroughly in this industry. It was kind of more a cottage industry. And like, we had two groups in Dragon's Den that both wanted to invest in us. They thought we were awesome, buttoned up, the future of commerce at that time. We were doing flash sales. and we got a couple of offers, and like I actually rejected Mr. Wonderful, which was which was probably one of the better feelings.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I mean, even at Moonshot, like we built this company to like help the little guy and help e-commerce owners like us who are, going against the odds. And, in that show, like he's the, the big gorilla. And it was really nice to have like another option and to go with, another group that was much more, pro, entrepreneur, which was fun. But I mean, the whole experience was great. We added like, hundreds of thousands of users. And, I'd recommend it to anyone. I mean, we're all trying to, build up our companies, get out there, get more eyeballs today. And I think there's more noise now than there was, even, this was, 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, that's definitely a awesome experience to have had, and to say no to Mr. Wonderful is like, I don't know, that has to
I think
it has to feel like a power move.
I have a pendant somewhere where I think I wore that for a few weeks after that show.
I would too. I think a big part of this, and it's been I think an increasingly more popular theme of even the show, is talking about this entrepreneurial mindset. Right. And it's, I mean, every, you can call them Amazon seller. I prefer to call them just online business or online retailer, is essentially their own entrepreneur. When you were building up that furniture company, I guess, what did you know to begin with? Like, how did this idea sort of spark?
So the truth is, very early on in life, I started working pretty early in summer jobs, and I had a job helping a furniture manufacturer in Toronto, and I saw the products there, and I understood how we define quality. To me, to a large extent, they were products that weren't really online yet. There was a big opportunity to be able to like create data and knowledge about the products that are really useful and super helpful. And I didn't, I wasn't one to think I was going to do something in fashion. It had to be really more practical if I was going to sell a product. And, in 2008, in the credit crisis, I went to a trade show with two good friends of mine that are partners. And we said, if we could onboard 30 manufacturers of home good products to do dropship with us in Canada, which was 5 years behind the US. I mean, we basically didn't have dropship. Then we'd build a site and launch a company where we sell these products. And turns out we went to the trade show, we hustled there for like 4 days in a row. We didn't know much about the industry, but 300 manufacturers signed up with us. So we saw an inherent need for like a service to like help these manufacturers in the home space and in the home decor space move their products in a non-traditional way. So like we were like a members only site, and you needed entry, and we, I think the famous ones in the US were like the Guild Group and Vente Privé in Europe. But, we're very much in the early innings of that whole idea, and we're very much like Canada's One Kings Lane. I'm not sure if you guys know One Kings Lane, but they did a similar thing in the US. But it was just an amazing experience, and we could just see such a need from these manufacturers in the credit crisis to really move products. And then as time went on, we ended up learning the products. We hired buyers from places like Wayfair, etc., that brought in a ton of knowledge. And by the end, I know an embarrassingly huge amount about the most nuanced things in home decor. But it's amazing. I think I think e-commerce entrepreneurs are special in that a lot of these guys that we deal with and we meet are and guys and girls, both men and women, sorry, that we meet have really, they're amazing entrepreneurs. Like they built these companies from scratch. Most of them haven't raised venture. They've learned how to merchandise. They've learned how to retail. They've learned how to market in the school of, hard knocks. Like you go out there, you put it up on Amazon, and you just see like if it goes and how it flows, and you learn all these things on the go. And really, we created Moonshot because we thought we could take our various experiences. Craig and I both built, we're involved in building significant like D2C and Amazon, e-commerce sites. And we could take, we can bring marketing that would only be available at a unicorn in the tech space to, a group of e-com companies, and that we could build technology platforms like we built in other spaces like finance and lending for the e-com space that like optimize and empower, sellers of e-com businesses to even help us take their businesses to the next level. Because I think a big thing that we do, and I mean, we do buy companies in a way where, we don't judge, and we really feel like we're cut from the same cloth as e-commerce owners. Mm-hmm. But like we buy businesses outright where the owner wants to do their next thing and we don't judge. But there's a whole other category of businesses we buy where e-com owners, join us, and we help them collectively take their companies to the next level by, significantly optimizing, marketing, again, by using channels that are only available to larger companies, by, optimizing data analytics and data science from our technology team to analyze opportunities for new products for them to put out there. And really, take some of the headaches away. Like, who wants to work on accounting? Who definitely wants to do customer service? Like we take a lot of those headaches away and centralize them and make it completely easier to do what you're best at. And like, if you join us, and like double down on that, because we think, these guys are super talented. They know their product well. And, there may be a few spaces where they're not as big experts, and like, let us help them there and push their brands to the next level and really get them, international, get them on all the marketplaces, put them in retail. I mean, really just make it more about the brand rather than the channel.
Yeah, and I would agree. Amazon and e-commerce business owners are scrappy, if nothing.
Yeah.
Well, where exactly are you seeing, and I know it's going to be different for every company, but where do you see some of the biggest weaknesses in some of these business owners that, particularly when it comes to scaling, that they might just be lacking, or that they can use more support in, is maybe a better way to say it?
I would say I don't really see purely consistent like weaknesses. And I actually think most of them that we bought, I mean, we buy companies that are a bit larger, are super talented guys and gals who have a ton of strength, in many areas of e-com. But, if we can use AI to optimize marketing in a way that's more analytical, like that's complementary, and they may not have the resources to do that. Or, if we set up, data analytics to look at their supply chain, which today has so many variable issues, like you mentioned earlier, whether they have, FBA and Amazon, and then stuff at warehouses that are near it. And then all of a sudden they're not allowed to put as much in FBA anyway. So they need another warehouse, and there's another stop and another loop and hole in the supply chain. Like we can sort of map those all out in real time and use technology instead of doing it like the hard way, where you have to aggregate all the data and you do it in some sleepy Excel sheet, and it's not constantly updated and renewed. And this is the power of being able to really spend on certain infrastructure that makes sense for a company like us that is growing the brands of the future, that owns multiple brands, that is larger, so you can put more resources to it and it makes sense and it's helpful. I mean, I think you're sort of seeing a professionalization of third-party e-commerce globally. And meaning, we're not the only one. There's a group of companies in here that are buying these companies. They have various different takes. I think where we distinguish ourselves is we really like and respect e-commerce owners. We're e-commerce guys, and we've built companies like this ourselves. And look, we want you to join us. Like if your dream is to, make your company bigger, but also have some liquidity, before that, and an exit, like we can give you sort of the best of both worlds. And, in very short order, you'll even be able to tell us, and we can look at the companies and the data and see what they've been doing extremely well, what they could use a little helping hand in. And those are the right mix. Like those are the types of companies that like we can really, add value to really quickly, and, offer optionality to these founders and help them, have sort of a bigger outcome, because they if they come to us, there's one outcome where there's a liquidity event, but there's also a back-ended liquidity event. If they build up their business with us, I mean, there's an opportunity for a payday in addition to a bonus to be able to do that with us. And it's really amazing. We think the sellers on these platforms are the hidden gems in this whole industry. And we're getting amazing people to join us, and they're brainstorming together, and really they're making each other's companies better together, which is really, really nice to see, not only in theory, but in practice.
What is this saying, that there's power in numbers? Is that what it is? Like,
I think so.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, definitely leveraging all of the brands together, like you had said, to get those different tools. Francois, go ahead and ask your question, because if not, I'm going to steal it.
Well, I was just gonna. It sounds like you're running a very similar model to YC in general, of creating this incubation space for Amazon aggregators, or for Amazon businesses. Are they Amazon focused businesses, or are you across the board any e-commerce?
So I would say we view the world as omni-channel, and we acquire companies that are Amazon focused, Shopify focused, a mix of both, because we see the world more broadly. But you're right, and actually, Francois, that was spot on, and it's something we discussed with some of the folks at YC when we were there. I think really our goal is to create a brand and a center of excellence where being part of the brand and being part of the group, really benefits sellers, with a knowledge base, with a network, with opportunities that are bigger, both during and after. Because a lot of these founders will come work with us for a couple of years and then start their next e-commerce company. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I mean, the thought is in the future to have something more like Moonshot University, where like there's even courses and some education when you join Moonshot, so that, we can help build up the areas, not only the areas where you're great, but also the areas where you'd like to learn more and get more understanding and speak to the world's experts. Like, again, because of size and because of scale, we're able to, offer that opportunity and really build up these entrepreneurs. So when they go back into the world, they're armed in a way with better ammunition to be able to like execute and hit their goals, and really as almost better e-commerce entrepreneurs. Because like I would say YC does that too. Like, look, I built 4 companies and sold 3, and I still, wanted to go and become part of that network, because it was sort of one of my bucket list things. I always wanted to do it. I thought the network's outstanding. I wanted exposure to the best people in the room. And like, YC has built some of the best companies in the world, and I would have never had access to see how these founders think, what they could do better, what ingredients of thinking went into like their, sort of call it formula of success. And I think exposure to this has been tremendously valuable to, my partners and I. And I think we want to create an ecosystem that's very similar to that in Moonshot.
So as somebody who has successfully exited multiple businesses, and now having the experience on the other end of buying, what advice would you give to an e-commerce business owner who's looking to exit, and maybe even special tips considering how crazy everything is now? Maybe like a little snippet of what Moonshot University would be.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things I would say is like, have a very good data room, like put everything in there that the investor can see, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because like we're pros, like we're going to look through it and find it. And like, look, every single business has great things about it and has some areas where it could do better. But like if you have a solid data room with all the information there, it significantly shortens the process of back and forth. So we don't take you away from your business. We can all analyze it pretty quickly, and we can close on these opportunities. Instead of them taking 6 months, they might take 30 days, or something like that. So I would say like a data room, I would say know your numbers, like have a fairly, up-to-date knowledge about, how you did last month at the company, what drove the key metrics. I think that's super important. And then I think like lastly, it's it's a process that should be, quite efficient, and be sure that you have some ideas before of how this process works, of value and things like that. And because it just makes the whole process easier, and you can get these opinions and this knowledge and data up front. So when you come to a meeting where you're looking to sell, it's just all buttoned up already, and it makes it faster. It makes it less painful. Like, I mean, when I went through that process with our first company, there was a buyer who we were going back and forth with for 6 months. They'd asked for things. They were kicking tires. They wasted our time, took us away from our business, and really created a lot of stress. And I think had we been much more buttoned up and knew, the various points that I said earlier, we could have done it in a month. And it would have been better for us, better for the company that bought us. And most of these things are knowable. I mean, today with the internet, there's so much data out there that you can just, even Google. And also in our space, there's a bunch of brokers, and some of them are great and some of them aren't. But, you can get a good idea of what a business is worth. Doesn't mean, you have to commit or anything like that. I mean, there's many ways to make yourself smarter and empower yourself in that process to have the most optimal outcome. And I mean, even us, you can reach out to us. We'd probably give you some idea of what, how we look at your business, where we see the strengths and, weaknesses. I mean, obviously we have an eye to buying a company and making it part of our, our network and et cetera. But just take your steps and be easily, you can prepare pretty easily for a few of these steps. And it's definitely worth putting in a little bit of that upfront time.
And I'm glad that you kind of touched on your experience selling a brand where it was less than great experience, right? Because I'm sure that some of these e-commerce business owners, unless they're in I don't know, a master class or some sort of one of these groups, that they're kind of going through the sales process and probably have questions along the way of is this normal? Is this supposed to take
Right.
this long?
Right.
So what are some of those, maybe, I don't know about red flags, but what were some of the things that happened? You said they were wasting time, kicking tires. What's some extraneous steps that were taken that maybe shouldn't have been from the...
Yeah, I mean, for us, for example, they would ask for our financials and we'd supply them, and then they'd ask for updates related to the financials. We'd supply them, and it sort of, I could see a company asking for that once or twice, but then the end of the month comes and you're like, okay, guys, what's going on here? We've spent all these time and put these resources towards you. They're like, oh, we want another month. And, oh, we want another month. So in a way, you sort of get the rhythm of that. If they're just kind of getting info and then they keep asking without something back, coming back to you, without taking an affirmative step and giving you clarity, you should, to be honest, you should just ask like you would in anything else. This is for sure one of the biggest or the biggest assets in your life. And you should just, really ask, are we just going to keep doing this back and forth, and am I just going to be providing endless information? What's the next step? What do you need to be satisfied to make your decision? Because to be honest, a no that's quick is better than there's nothing worse than a no that takes forever. It's just,
or maybe.
Yeah.
Constant maybes.
And I would say maybes are a maybe after a month or two is a no. It's just either person's polite or keeping an option, or I don't know what it is, but I would say that's advice. A maybe after 2 months is a no.
Gotcha.
Well, and we see that all the time, particularly in sourcing on our end when it comes to, let's say, product development, or whenever buyers are working with new factories or suppliers. And these are a lot of complaints that we heard from the factories, even where it was hey, this new boom in Amazon or just general e-commerce is leading us to have 20 conversations instead of 2 serious conversations. And
right.
Everyone knows, they need to get it at this price and it has to have these specifications, but no one is necessarily ready for the conversation, right? They might say, oh, I think I needed $1.50, and then they come back a week later, I actually need $1.45, and it has to have these tweaks to it, and it's it turns into an endless process. But what it boils down to is just being human, right? And the relationship that you can hold there, and that's what it sounds like is more important to you and to your colleagues, obviously, and establishing a decent form of communication is important, right? And just laying down those baselines.
I think it's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think,
yeah.
It's like any other, transaction you do. You're not, this one, it might be big for you, so you're more worried about it. But like, I would say with us, like we built e-commerce companies. We wanted to build a company, targeting and addressing a group of people that we liked, and like we wanted to help and we wanted to make better. And, in all our interactions, like we strive, and, sometimes I'm sure like anyone else, sometimes we don't reach that goal that we have. But I mean, we're striving to make this process the most founder-friendly process possible, that's quick, transparent, and really empowering to sellers in the space.
And I mean, another aspect that I love about it, and this is one thing I really like about YC, is that you mentioned earlier that it'll make them better e-commerce entrepreneurs, but I think it'll just make them better entrepreneurs in general.
Right.
It's really understanding the pillars, the finance, the operations, the sales and marketing. And those same principles could be applied across the board, whether it's SaaS, whether it's D2C, consumer products. That's one thing I am very excited to see, especially in the next few years with you building what you're building currently. There was a question about supply chain, and it was very specific, but I forgot it. But in general, what sort of it'll come back, I'm sure. What sort of issues are you currently seeing, I guess, with businesses that maybe that have approached you recently, or that are just taking on 2021 as a challenging supply chain year?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, I guess we're sort of almost a good group to see what's going on in general, because we look at many businesses and we speak to many owners. And I think, it's like, I'd love to say there's many novel things that I'm seeing, but, it's really more like, products being stuck at the port, factories taking on too much, and, delivering partial orders, not full orders, and, not having a good idea and good insight to, is all your Christmas stuff going to come, on time? And in general, like, you're just seeing, container prices go up. I mean, there was a little bleep where they went down recently, which is good. And I think that's going to happen. But I think there's a lot of, anxiety around this for sure, for the Christmas season, etc. And we're seeing stuff get more expensive. And, I think at the end of the day, it'll probably convert to things being a little more expensive at a certain point for the end user too. I mean, we're not going to, all of the companies and the service providers in the space are not going to be the only ones who feel this impact. You'll also end up seeing it in those prices. But I think there's like, I don't know when it is in the next, call it year, when I think these things will normalize themselves. But I think currently, we're all feeling, the logistics. We're all feeling, the supply chain issues, and in a way, like anything else, like, if you're the only one experiencing it, it would be, a huge disadvantage for your business. But like, if a whole ecosystem, an entire sector is feeling it, it's really more about thinking about what you can do to help address it, what levers you have. And, this too shall pass. That's the way we look at it, and that's the way we see it.
Yeah, this may be the Christmas of buying services as opposed to gifts for your friends and loved ones. So
except the services also seem to be getting more expensive. It's interesting. I mean, it's like, it's all over the place, like inflation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they do. But I mean, there's certain experiences that you can do that aren't necessarily rising in cost. I mean, when you think about some of the
Fair.
businesses that have been suffering, like maybe like I know that Six Flags season passes were cheaper this year than they have been before because they lost so much money having to be
Right.
closed. And Whitewater, Georgia Aquarium, Callaway Gardens, these are all Georgia things, but it's the only thing I could think of. But stuff like that, I mean, you can still do. I don't know. Francois sent us a
Yeah,
link to a video the other day about
I
Christmas. And I was
agree
like,
with you. I think, look, like human ingenuity and the ability to overcome, it's unbelievable. Like, I mean, just COVID, who would have believed like we'd all mostly be, in different, again, I'm in Toronto and we're hyper almost locked down, but people have been just as efficient or more efficient working at home and never going to an office. And it's like amazing. I was involved in I started my career after business school in the credit crisis, and that the whole economy was horrible. People were out of jobs and you just saw chaos. And I mean, when COVID started, I thought both on Main Street and in corporate, it would end up being like that. And it has been super hard for small merchants, et cetera. But on the other hand, in some areas in e-commerce, it's created a boom. So it's really interesting how adaptable like human beings are. And I think, overall, it's just impressive how all of us have like performed through this time and how efficient we've been. And what doesn't break you, makes you stronger. And I think I see that a lot, especially in the hustle, in the entrepreneurship in the e-com space.
I would agree.
Are you starting to see any more businesses that approach you taking on loans to support their supply chain? For example, taking on loans for more inventory or for the rising shipping costs?
So, to be honest, in due diligence, I mean, maybe that impact has not fully been seen yet. Like I think there's always been certain categories that are, that the inventory for them is far more expensive than others, where loans have been part of the process. But I would say we see that, but I think the full impact of that will still take a while to see play out.
Gotcha. Yeah, because we just had someone on the other day. We were talking about, I think it was maybe after the show, but we were talking the valuation that a business gets when they are coming in with inheriting this debt, right? And even just looking at like PPP loans and everything else going on, I wasn't sure if there was a major impact on the valuation of that company.
Well, sure. Look, certainly, like you said, if you buy a company with debt on it, that impacts the equity, and it makes it in a way less pricey because you'd probably buy it and just take on that obligation. And you see, there's a bunch of companies in the e-com space who provide, debt financing, and, from what I understand, they've been thriving in this time, but, to a large extent, they're helping create liquidity for e-commerce owners. And if you have a good business, you usually look at the debt you can take on, and, while too much debt is bad, some debt creates liquidity, creates opportunity, enables people to thrive in certain businesses. And, I believe this is one where, liquidity, in a way, if you don't overdo it, that type of liquidity is very helpful, to some owners that are stuck, that, can't buy inventory. But again, this has to be tempered with doing it in moderation. I mean, you don't want to be, super leveraged.
Right.
Delicate balance.
Yeah. I mean, it just
really
increases risk, I guess, in your eyes too, you and your team's eyes.
Sure.
The more debt that they take on too.
Sure. And like we also, look, we might buy a business that has debt and take out the debt. Like we might pay off the debt and just like keep the business functioning the same, but it doesn't have that debt that it had before.
Gotcha. That makes sense. When you're, I guess another part that a lot of businesses are struggling with is they didn't see these rise in shipping costs, right? They didn't see these super extended lead times. Do you have any advice for them where this might have thrown off their plans to sell? Because let's say their sales just crapped out because they didn't have inventory, or Amazon's changing inventory levels that seem to change every few months, or some sort of Amazon related thing. It seems to change every few months.
True.
Impacts their sale. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would definitely say, like in our category of more, call it professional buyers, we know these issues and we've seen them happen in various companies. And in a way, I definitely don't think for us, the same way as it would be for a smaller purchaser, we would understand them, and we'd be able to evaluate them objectively because we've seen them happen before and in context. So I would say, if you are at a stage where you wanted to sell your company anyway, and it's a good company, but you've laid on some debt during COVID for whatever reason, we understand these reasons. And like, if you discuss them with us, we'll, we have, data points that, provide us understanding of if that's consistent. And I think given the right company, if it's a good company, and it's a little, it has a little bit too much debt, I still think we could buy companies like that, and we might even figure out a way how to clean those up. By clean up, I mean deleverage the balance sheet to have a little less debt on it.
And then do you also, I guess, when they are approaching you to begin with, we talked about this data center. What are some of those key metrics that they do need to really, keep in mind? Obviously, I'm thinking margins are an obvious one.
Yeah. Margin's definitely an obvious one. Yeah. like for us, I think every company that buys other companies may have some different criteria. But we think it's nice to have like a healthy margin of, call it double digits % or over consistently. We like companies that sell to consumers. We like companies that sell to businesses. We buy private label products. We like, many categories, both big ones and niche ones that are growing well. Really, in a way, we're, while there's some categories we love, we're industry agnostic. Like, we really think we can just analyze what a good company is, based on our proprietary formula that we're happy with, and we've built with data and tech and really, historical know-how. But we just really think it's a great time, and if you have a good company, like you said earlier, if you want to sell it, and COVID has impacted it in some ways negatively too, we know that, like, we know what sectors have been affected more negatively than others as well, because we're constantly looking at the macro picture and understanding almost all industries in the e-commerce space, all subsectors, and how they're doing and what's impacted them, etc. Yeah.
Are you guys just buying North American brands, or do you buy brands from all over the world?
No, so we definitely buy brands from all over the world. Canada, US, Europe, Asia are some areas. Australia, super interesting to us. And really, as we grow, we're looking to get even into more regions that make sense. I mean, any country almost where there's third-party marketplaces and significant e-commerce growth, we're interested in, and definitely buying in multiple countries, globally.
Gotcha.
And then what sort of look at their supply chain? I guess, how deep do you dive into this? And I'm talking a lot about supply chain because that's more so like my shtick.
I would say really, really deep.
Oh.
Like we have an amazing team that we've been able to build of folks that have done global supply chain at the top level, and we have a process it's quick, but it's thorough. In analyzing the companies we look at, and like you said, I mean, today we of course we all have to be cognizant of what's going on in the supply chain, what's it going to look like in 6 months. I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but at least you've got to underwrite scenarios of risk, and you have to look at probabilities of what might happen in the future, and then have your own thesis of how you move forward with that. And I mean, we have ways of doing this quite quickly, but we do the work. I mean, we're pretty thorough as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And then
if anybody does have a crystal ball, stop hogging it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. If you guys are keeping it somewhere, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, trading futures and containers would be crazy right now. But
Exactly.
when it comes to supplier diversification and country diversification, how does that play into their valuation?
Yeah, so I would say, look, like in any area like that, the right diversity is helpful. And when we're looking at valuations, we look at multiple things. We look at financial criteria, we look at the industry, we look at issues happening in the industry, we look at supply chain, and we look at certain risks. And I would say all of those things are a factor, and in some companies they're more of a factor than in others. Like where we've identified more risk in a subsector.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think a big conversation, and maybe it's just targeted towards me again because I'm very into supply chain, but it's this conversation around anti-dumping and countervailing duties for a ton of products, specifically those coming from China, but also conversations into Vietnam, into Malaysia, into a lot of these traditional, maybe you can call them circumvent countries, right? Ships from China to this country, and they slap a label on it and say made in such and such. I imagine that a lot of these entrepreneurs might not have the most experience when it comes to supply chain, particularly global supply chain, because it's very complex.
Fair. That's fair.
How much information and where would you recommend that they get some level of education when it comes to supply chain?
Sure, definitely. Like, I mean, there's places like Chamber of Commerce in each of these countries, and better business bureaus and things like that. Those are super helpful. I certainly think, if you're going into a new region, getting a legal opinion is something, pretty helpful. Mind you, there are ways to do it that might be less costly than others. I mean, for us, it's obviously part of our due diligence, and I'm a recovering lawyer, so we take that I've been recovering for a long time, but we take that very seriously. But I would imagine even in the trade groups, in the in the institutions that are governed with helping small business in e-com or even in logistics, they would have like general parameters that give you like 80% of the answer, which is enough to like know the direction.
Yeah. People make educated decisions.
But you got to take the time, and you got to do the work. And we get really, solo entrepreneurs get so busy that sometimes, they don't have the time, or I don't know if it's don't have the time or don't take the time. And there's probably both. Like sometimes you just don't have the time, but to do the work, to look into these things. And they should.
Well, and I love the fact that you didn't just say, go watch a YouTube video or take a course, because that is a lot of times where we see issues, right? Where they don't want to maybe take the additional time to read through a Chamber of Commerce article, or honestly, even Googling it, and you can look up the countries that you're part of and not just listen to a YouTube video is always one of the more reliable ways, I think. It's a shittier process. It takes longer, but it works. From my experience,
I would definitely say in something as pragmatic and global as like online retail, We think of ourselves as like learning animals, like a group that just constantly has to learn and be updated and read and, know what's going on. So we don't count only on, secondary sources. Like we go out there and do the work for sure.
Fantastic. And we are nearing the end of our hour, unfortunately. Allan, real quick, you had mentioned earlier that Moonshot generally works with larger brands. If somebody's interested in getting in contact with you and selling their business, kind of what range do they need to be in?
Yeah,
to be a good fit?
definitely. I mean, I would say we're interested in companies fit our model that have probably $1.5 million of sales or more.
Gotcha.
And they can email us at info@moonshotbrands.com or go to our website. There's like a form that takes 2 seconds to fill out, and we'll get back to you in 24 hours. Definitely.
Awesome. And then that website again is moonshotbrands.com. It'll be linked in the description of the video and the audio version. Allan, thank you so much for speaking with us today. This has been awesome.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Francois. Thanks, Lisa. This was great.
Thank you. It has been our pleasure. And for anybody watching live or listening after the fact, thank you again for being here. If you guys liked what you heard today, be sure to like, comment, share with your network, subscribe to the show, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and ring that bell for notifications on our YouTube channel so that you never miss a conversation with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Allan Fisch with Moonshot Brands. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, guys.